No dia 3 de setembro de 2025, no centro LGTBI de Barcelona, entrevistei Fran, uma rapariga trans, e Derek, ambos sobreviventes de tentativas de suicídio. Histórias diferentes, mas que convergem no mesmo ponto: a urgência de cuidado e de uma escuta que não abandone. Fran recorda que quem se suicida não o faz por falta de amor à vida, mas por não suportar uma dor que não é acolhida. Pede a criação de centros de crise abertos 24 horas, onde seja possível encontrar apoio imediato. Derek partilha que cresceu a acreditar que pedir ajuda era fraqueza. Hoje sabe que pedir ajuda é uma competência, algo que se aprende, se pratica e pode salvar vidas. Ambos mostram que prevenir é cuidar a tempo, garantir redes de apoio, terapia continuada e, sobretudo, presença humana, porque pedir ajuda não é fraqueza, é coragem e também autonomia.
¿Qué te ha motivado a compartir con nosotros esta experiencia?
La primera de todas las cosas que me ha motivado ha sido que no me da la real gana de que las infancias y adolescencias queer lleguen a este límite. La segunda de las cosas que me ha motivado es que no me da la real gana de que nadie tenga que pasar por aquí. Y la cuarta de las cosas que me ha motivado es que estamos en medio de una epidemia que no queremos escuchar, y si no la queremos escuchar llegará un momento que nos va a arrasar. La cantidad de personas que yo he visto morir a lo largo de este tiempo es bárbara.
No consigo dejar, claro, de escuchar en tu voz quizás muchas emociones. Hay rabia o frustración, me parece estar muy presentes.
Sí.
Y me pregunto, ¿cómo vienes manejando todas estas emociones? Porque, claro, te escucho y pienso, sí, tienes razón.
Leo, escribo, lloro, voy al psicólogo, voy al psiquiatra, y desde la más absoluta soledad a veces, pues me escucho y escribo.
¿Y quién hace parte de tu sistema de apoyo? Además de profesionales de salud, es muy importante. Pregunto si sientes la necesidad de compartir algo respecto a cómo te sientes, cómo te ha ido el día, pensamientos, lo que sea. ¿Es fácil para ti encontrar a quien esté disponible para escuchar, para acoger?
Sí, pero no. Sí, porque puedo recurrir a dos personas. No, porque el resto de las personas a las que podría recurrir están bastante jodidas. Y si yo sobrecargo emocionalmente a estas personas, las voy a dejar chafadísimas. Entonces, tengo que hacer unos ciertos malabares a la hora de poder coger y compartir con alguien todo lo que llevo dentro. Y además, hay días que lo que llevo dentro es tan bestia que no puedo llamar a nadie. No puedo llamar a nadie porque si llamo a alguien lo bloqueo completamente, o sea, lo destrozo. Y eso lo tengo que manejar como buenamente puedo. Cuando ya se pasa la marisma, entonces puedo llamar a alguien y nos reímos un rato. Y muchas veces no lo voy a llamar por decirle que no estoy bien, hay veces que sí, hay veces que simplemente voy a poner una excusa. Pero el hecho de escuchar una voz humana me calma mucho.
Y mirando hacia atrás, pensando en el intento suicida,
Vale.
¿qué te gustaría compartir respecto a lo que te acuerdas de esa experiencia?
Esa experiencia la recuerdo y no la recuerdo. Yo sé que me suicidaba o me intentaba suicidar a mediados de noviembre, y sé que la noche del propio intento autolítico, estaba con el que entonces era mi pareja, con un colega, y llegó un momento en que me desbordé por completo por una serie de circunstancias que pasaron, y decidí tomarme una caja y una tableta y media de benzodiazepinas con toda la medicación. A partir de ese momento lo que recuerdo es tumbarme en la cama, ponerme el CPAP, porque yo tengo una máquina para dormir, para respirar, ponerme el CPAP y no despertar hasta 48 horas después. Ya está.
¿Y cuándo te has dado cuenta de que has sobrevivido?
La gran putada de que cuando me doy cuenta de que he sobrevivido es una putada y una bendición, ¿eh? Es muy dulce porque me despierto y después es muy amarga. Es muy dulce porque me despierto y tengo la sensación de como si hubiese dormido y ya está. Pero es muy amarga porque me despierto en una cama, en una habitación más pequeña, bastante más pequeña como esta, la mitad de esta, con 2 camas, una mascarilla porque estábamos en pleno COVID, sexta ola, y la mascarilla lo primero que veo cuando hago así directamente es que está negra. Entonces yo ya sabía que me habían puesto una sonda nasogástrica y me habían aplicado carbón activo para coger y bloquear las benzodiazepinas en el estómago. Funcionó porque si no hubiese funcionado estaría muerta, porque era una tableta y media, lo que significaban 15 pastillas. Más toda la medicación que yo llevo, que no es poca, son unos 850 miligramos de carbamazepina, unos 375 de pregabalina, 7,5 de midazolam, 7,5 de lanzapina, 75 de clorpramina, 25 de amitriptilina. Si no consigo aún así si aún así no consigo aguantarlo todo, tengo el alprazolam, que es de 0,5, y cuando hay días que no puedo más con el dolor porque padezco fibromialgia y tengo el grado más grave, entonces tengo tramadol, 50 miligramos de tramadol. Y esta semana he tenido un brote y he tenido que irme solita hasta el hospital para que no me sirviese de nada porque el médico no sabía literalmente qué hacer conmigo. Me acabó dando un medicamento que al día siguiente, cuando lo fui a retirar, no lo podía retirar porque no lo había firmado.
¿Y tú qué crees que podría haber hecho ayudarte? ¿Qué haría el cambio?
Mira, yo creo que el cambio ya está hecho en parte. Queda otra parte que no está hecha, pero el cambio está hecho en parte. Y yo creo que si esto llega a alguien y este alguien pide ayuda y no llega al límite al que yo llegué, eso ya sería una parte del cambio. Sería una parte del ya está, hecho. Es un legado lo que dejo aquí. Hoy este testimonio es un legado.
Mirando hacia frente, al futuro,
¿vale?
Ahora mismo, ¿qué ves?
¿Qué veo yo en el futuro?
¿Existe algún objetivo, algún escenario donde puedas decir, sí, consigo ser yo misma y estar bien y proteger mi salud, tener esperanza?
Sí, lo hay. Lejano, pero lo hay. Lejano, pero lo hay porque las ideas autolíticas no han desaparecido, persisten. Y es una lucha de un David contra un Goliat.
¿Pero qué existe en ese escenario, en esa fantasía que puedas proyectar en el futuro?
Pues yo creo que existe compartir mi espacio con una o dos personas. Voy a empezar la carrera de psicología en la UB, con lo cual la quiero acabar. Si la consigo acabar ya sería un reto bestial. Y existir, pues no sé si existe mucha cosa más. La verdad es que si comparto mi espacio vital con una o dos personas, estoy más que contenta. No le pido mucho más a la vida.
Bueno, estoy pensando una vez más en el acto y pensando en el impacto que ha tenido a la gente a su alrededor. ¿Qué te acuerdas de eso?
El impacto que tuvo en la gente de alrededor fue que hubo un colega que no pudo con ello, hubo un colega que lo vio entrar a la ambulancia, vio cómo se me llevaban, no pudo con ello y se fue, desapareció, no lo volvió a ver. El que era mi pareja se desbordó por completo, no me dijo nada Y un año después, cuando volví a hablar con él para explicarle qué me había pasado, qué es lo que había sentido y cómo fue todo, él me explicó que aquella misma noche también lo intentó.
¿Y cómo has reaccionado a esa información?
Pues me quedé completamente bloqueada, le di un pedazo de abrazo y nos fuimos a llorar los dos, ya está. Él y yo nos pusimos a llorar, no había más. Y como fue en los ferrocarriles, que era camino de Sabadell a Barcelona y no había mucha gente porque me parece que era un día de estos cercano al verano, pero que aún, no sé si era por la mañana y no sé si era mediados de julio, principios de agosto, a primeras horas de la mañana, no había mucha gente y entonces lo abracé y el hecho de abrazarlo cogió y lo hizo llorar y yo también me puse a llorar. Y con ese mismo llorar y mirándonos los dos lo entendimos perfectamente. Más adelante, él también llegó a una situación más extrema que la mía, casi lo intenta y lo consigue. Y al ser eso un grito de ayuda, yo cogí, lo llevé a urgencias, al centro de urgencias de atención primaria de Barcelona, del Raval, el Peracamps. Y cuando vi la atención que le iban a dar, llamé a mi psiquiatra privado y a la semana siguiente tenía visita. Me salté el protocolo del sistema público, vi que no iba a funcionar y dije, vente a mi psiquiatra y ya está. Mi psiquiatra y mi psicólogo le salvaron la vida.
O sea, has conseguido también apoyar, ayudar a alguien.
Sí.
Aunque quizás no haya habido mucha gente capaz de hacerlo contigo.
Sí. También recuerdo aquella experiencia que al día siguiente, cuando obtuve el alta, me fui a ver, aquella noche me fui a casa de Judith, una amiga, que es trans también, y al día siguiente por la mañana, durante un mes, me acoge un colega trans también que se llama Alex, y entonces pues reempecé todo y remonté un poco en Tarrasa. Monté de nuevo lo que tenía que montar aquí en mi cabeza y empecé a vivir otra forma diferente de vida en Tarrasa.
¿Otra forma de vida?
Sí. Otra forma de vida diferente. O sea, cuando yo me suicidé, yo sabía que suicidarme tenía que haber suicidado hace mucho tiempo, pero había algo que me mantenía aún a flote y sin estallar. Y aquel día pues estallé completamente y reventé por todos lados. Y claro, al estallar pues me llevé por delante a dos personas que me importaban mucho y de hecho ese fue el motivo por el que también me suicidé o me intenté suicidar.
Bueno, te quería preguntar qué espacio o qué importancia tiene la terapia, la búsqueda de ayuda junto a un psiquiatra que has hablado en tu vida.
Pues es importante porque pasan tres cosas. Lo primero es que te reorganiza a nivel mental. Lo segundo es que puedes entender todo lo que te pasa. Y lo tercero es que cuando una vez entiendes todo lo que te pasa y te reorganizas más o menos a nivel mental, es que entonces te quieres un poquito más y te perdonas un poco. Entiendes toda tu trayectoria. Y cuando te quieres un poco más, entiendes lo que te pasa y además obtienes un tratamiento y una ayuda, acabas no tratándote como una loca de manual, sino como una persona.
Bueno, con todo lo que has aprendido y que estarás trabajando dentro de ti misma, digo, cuando miras hacia atrás, ¿qué piensas respecto a la persona que ha intentado?
Angelito, te entiendo perfectamente, no pasa nada. Mañana cogemos, nos sentamos un ratito tú y yo y empezamos a charlar a ver qué pasa.
Sabiendo que va a haber mucha gente que te va a escuchar tus palabras, tu testimonio, Me pregunto si hay algún mensaje que te gustaría compartir con la gente que pueda estar, ¿sabes?, en una situación más vulnerable.
Hay tantos. Hay uno en especial. Cuando alguien se suicida, no se suicida porque quiera suicidarse. La gente que suicida tiene un amor enorme a la vida, lo que pasa es que no aguanta el sufrimiento que tiene encima. Y cuando estás a 5 pastillas de tener que someterte a electroshocks porque los ISRS y los ISRN en ti no han funcionado, solo te quedan los tricíclicos, y si se acaban los tricíclicos solo te quedan los IMAO, y no te vas a poder tomar muchos IMAO porque tomas un montón de medicación. Yo lo que les quiero decir es que te encuentras como en un mar en calma, relativamente, que se empieza a agitar y de golpe y porrazo es una ola de 10 metros que coge, te bloquea por completo, y en ese bloquearte por completo la mente se te ciega y te arrasa. La ola de 10 metros se mete por ti, te arrasa y te lleva mar adentro, y es cuando te puedes morir. Entonces lo que yo quiero que entienda la gente es que en ese momento no somos nosotros o nosotras, es el dolor. Y cuando ese dolor te atraviesa por dentro de forma tan profunda, lo que tienes que hacer es acompañar, no dejar. Y no están solos, ni solas. No lo están. No lo están, ni lo tienen que estar. Y yo les prometo y les aseguro que cuando al día siguiente ese dolor se haya calmado, van a encontrar un poco de paz. Es decir, que no lo intenten, no merece la pena intentarlo. Yo sé lo que comporta, yo sé lo en paz y en calma que te sientes con el intento hecho, pero lo que te espera después es sumamente agotador.
Para ti, ahora mismo, en tu vida, ¿qué hace con que la vida valga la pena?
Para mí, ¿qué hace que la vida valga la pena? Pues mira, la vida vale la pena porque conozco a Laura. Lo que hace que la vida valga la pena es que conozco a Marc. Para mí vale la pena tomarme un café con Marc. Es una persona sumamente entrañable y que me ha ayudado mucho. Y sobre todo no me ha juzgado, porque se ha puesto en mis zapatos, aunque no los haya compartido, pero el hecho de vivir con VIH también hace mucho. Para mí lo que también hace que la vida valga la pena es que voy a empezar psico y por lo tanto voy a tener la cabeza ocupada en aprender y tener más información de muchísimas cosas que quizá ahora entienda, que quizá ahora no entienda, pero entonces sí. Para mí lo que la vida hace que valga la pena es que estar conectado con la gente hace que el dolor sea mucho más soportable. Cuanto más te aíslas, cuantas más dificultades tienes a la hora de conseguir poder conectarte con la gente, es cuanto más dolor tienes. Y el dolor más se manifiesta. De hecho, yo abogo muchísimo por abrir un centro de crisis 24 horas. Pero que no haya psiquiatras, que haya psicólogos, que haya enfermeros, auxiliares e integradores sociales. Y que allí no se medicalice. Se tiene que ir solo y justo cuando vayas a tener el pedazo de dolor. Que sean las 2:30 de la noche o las 3 de la mañana y te levantes sudadita, empapada en dolor, te tires al suelo, te tomes el tramadol, no sirva de nada y encima tengas los pensamientos autolíticos. Y te arrastres con todo el dolor al centro de crisis y puedas abrazar pues a quien esté por allí, sea de forma profesional o también sea de forma no profesional, sea como usuario o usuaria.
motivated you to share this experience with us at this specific moment of your life?
I think getting older within my years and having received so much support through mental health activism and various different initiatives across Spain and the UK for 15, 20, 25 years, having seen the call for raising awareness for mental health and for making sure that people feel supported within their own mental health and survival of their own mental health, it was important for me, having gone through an experience that is being one of the lowest points in my life, to help support others within my own community to ensure that that they're still here 20 or 30 years later, and giving back is something that I've really enjoyed doing over the past couple of years within Barcelona. Particularly, I've been doing it in London, back to my own community. So I think this is an important piece of work that I think can help. If it's just one, perfect. If it's 10, even better. If it's more, fantastic.
So this is your way of giving back?
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm going through a process of transparency with my therapist at the moment, and I think part of this is perhaps slightly selfish in terms of my own recovery, but also being transparent with others and transparent to myself. Yeah.
And have you always had that kind of connection with the ability of asking help? Because as we know, it's quite difficult for many people to actually face the stigma and come out asking for help. So I was wondering about your connection with that ability.
I've had zero ability to ask for help. I grew up in an environment where asking for help was seen as a weakness. Asking for support emotionally was seen as a weakness. It was very much if you wanted to express yourself in doing something and it wasn't done quite right, it was taken over. It wasn't supported. So something silly as in trying to build some IKEA furniture. The environment that I grew up in was about, don't do that, give me it here. So I wasn't formed in terms of being supported with somebody next to me. I was always being dominated by somebody else. So that really has informed a lot of my years, and asking for help has been very difficult for me throughout for most of my life, but actually within the past couple of years, I've come to realise with maturity that asking for help is not a bad thing. And the reason is because I have friends, I have colleagues, I have people in my life that come to me for help, and it puts you in a powerful but vulnerable position. And then in turn you look at yourself and go, do you know what, if I have X number of colleagues or reportees coming to me in my workplace asking for help through work, professional or personal, then why can't I? It's slightly empowering.
And do you remember the first time that you said it out loud, I'm not okay, this is facing probably the lowest point of my life? Do you remember those moments?
No, I don't. I do remember the lowest point of my life, and subsequently from that there's not a lot of memories surrounding certain points of my life. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realise, that when they reach a crisis that they feel that they don't want to live anymore and go through but survive, it's not often spoken about that you will have and do have memory loss. And it can be surrounding a particular episode. It could be from the days, weeks or months after. But for me personally, it is wiped out most of my childhood, and it's wiped out most of my teenage years, and I'd say it's wiped out most of my 20s.
And how have you been coping with that? I mean, that obviously interrupts, the continuity of your storyline.
It's not something I've ever actually really thought about. When people say to me, do you remember when? Nope. I don't remember that. Do you remember when we were children? No. Do you remember when you went to that family party? No. Do you remember when we went partying at university? No.
And when you realize that, what kind of emotional resonance, if any, do you feel attached to that recognition? The idea that, I can't remember. Does that have any emotional impact when you realize that you don't have those memories?
It's frustrating, really, really frustrating, because you're trying to piece together your life, but you can remember people, places and things, but you can't put it in a chronological order. And it then puts a strain into your own memory in terms of your identity, and that's something that I think I've struggled with in the past couple of years, particularly going through professional help, is having to re-establish myself not only in a new city-ish, but also as a person that actually can't remember, I'd say, half of their life because of one particular moment in that lifetime.
Survived, what went through your mind? What did you feel? What was that experience like?
So,
again, obviously based on what you can remember.
No, I do remember very much. I attempted to take my life through hanging, and it was whilst I was in university. It was my last year of university, coming towards the end of graduation, and I was in a crisis of I don't know what to do. I am unprepared. I'm not supported. Whatever, and I was just in a period of darkness, and I'd gone through quite a horrific infection the year before, which had made my mental health worse, and basically it was a progression from that. And I remember the act itself, and essentially it didn't work because most environments within universities are basically safe environments where you cannot really self-harm particularly. And I went straight to the kitchen. It was a shared house. I remember going straight to the kitchen and telling my colleague, who just went, oh shit. And then she went to tell the accommodation officer, who then called my mum, who was living 350 miles away in the north of England, who had to leave work, who then called my then partner, coming from London who then all arrived at my house. There was ambulance, there was multiple people that were living in my house, and I was taken to, I wasn't institutionalized in the local hospital. I was taken to a private facility organized by the local health authority, because I was not deemed basically of at risk enough to, so it was basically, I wasn't an habitual mental health case that required perhaps a less progressive, so I don't know really how to say this, but they deemed me like somebody that this was a one-time thing, they could rehabilitate me through correct procedures and everything. I was not somebody that was mentally ill, essentially, that would require going into a secure facility. And so I remember that. I remember my mum coming, I remember my then partner and his best friend coming. Lots of confusion, lots of tears. I remember getting the taxi with my mum. I remember going to hospital and having to speak to my dad on the phone, who was also in the north of England. And I remember going for x-rays, so that's all quite clear. Got in that taxi, and then I think I remember, apparently I was there for 3 weeks. And I remember 2 days of it, basically.
And now that you are sharing this with us, when you look back, what does impact you the most?
The thing is, it seems so long ago. Like, it seems, I think this comes down to the whole memory loss thing. It seems another lifetime ago. It doesn't almost seem like my story. It could be a story that I've heard, or it's something because of that disassociation. And to be very honest, I wasn't necessarily well supported after that episode. I was in the institution for 3 to 4 weeks, and I remember graduating. Honestly, I'd say in 2 months, I probably remember all of about 4 days. And describing this now to you, I don't actually feel anything. Okay, because as I said, is that I don't remember the emotions. I don't remember how I felt. I remember how I felt when I was doing it, or considering it and doing the act itself. But in terms of reflecting on it, it could be my story, it could be your story, it could be anybody else's story.
Were you surprised about the reaction of people around you?
I think a lot of people were surprised because, I was working, in retail, I was studying, I was doing nightlife at the same time, and I was still am a necessarily outgoing person. But I think a lot of people were surprised because it was a very sudden thing.
I'm thinking, do you think that there could have been anything, any gesture, any voice of support that could perhaps hold you, prevent you from trying?
I think now going back to when I was not well the year before, which resulted in, poor mental health. Now I'm going back to 2015, 2016. Even then, the mental health was not a conversation. It was not a consideration, and it was just something that And they just shoved you some tablets and were like, okay, you're not happy, here's some tablets, get on with it. And I do remember going for counselling in my university, part of the care package, I guess. It was terrible.
How so?
It was, I just remember walking out as a joke, you know? And I remember talking about, at the time, something quite trivial. And we spent 2 weeks on something very trivial about the way that somebody ate. There was a guy that I was seeing and it was weird. And she was like, oh, so you didn't like the way he ate on the date? I was like, no. So we spent 2 weeks on that.
Focusing just on that. Yeah.
So, you know, things, you know, it wasn't given a serious consideration. So after I was unwell the year before, you know, I wasn't supported through the health, you know, the NHS, through the doctors. There was no consideration for medication. There was no consideration through serious counselling. There was no consideration for what could happen in the future. So, you know, the two things could be unrelated in terms of, or seem unrelated in terms of, this guy has basically got like a blood infection and it's deteriorating his physical and his mental health, but it's okay, we found out what the cause is, so we're going to treat it, but what's going to happen along the line? Is there any more consequences to that? What's going to affect that? And also, what's the other surrounding things that have packaged this into something that down the line was quite consequential?
Coming from, as you said, an environment where everything was shushed, everything was kept quiet, we didn't talk about mental health, we didn't talk about asking for help. I'm wondering if you yourself faced any kind of prejudice against mental health.
I wouldn't say prejudice against mental health. I think that, you know, my mum was institutionalized for a period of time, and so my exposure to that was basically into what we would consider a very serious, you know, wing of a hospital, where you had people with schizophrenia, you had people with personality disorders, you had people that were going through episodes, manic episodes. So, you know, and I was quite young, so I was probably very early teens, and, you know, but of course, being exposed to that at home as well, you always associate poor mental health with just somebody being crazy. I did not see any other path at the time than to die, basically. And I did not consider, because I was not brought up to ask for help, was not allowed to express my emotions, was not allowed to cry. You know, anything that was perceived as confrontational or emotional was not essentially allowed. And, you know, it was done, but it was not allowed, it was shut down. So in my view, what I was going through at the time was my problem and my problem alone. So I was not able to express or share that with anybody else, in my view, in my head. So the only way to stop those feelings was to stop my life. The access now to good mental health support is still severely limited. And you know, within workplaces, that everybody's great at offering, you know, dental, health insurance, gym pass, restaurant ticket, whatever. Yeah, great with the health insurance, but did you know that actually only limits yourself to usually about 15 sessions? 15 sessions is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Do you know what? I would give up restaurant ticket and gym pass to probably get another 15 sessions for mental health support. And to be very honest, I think everybody as an employer has a duty of care to supply one or two, you know, employed psychologists or, you know, mental health support workers in the office. Now imagine you're working in an office of 900 people. You need minimum 2 people daily for support. People could be going through bereavement, they could be facing financial issues, they could be going through relationship issues, and they've got to deal with that every day while also providing for themselves and their family in an office space or even at home. And it's difficult. It's difficult. You know, I've worked with and I've been manager of teams where I was managing a guy who was really lovely, really nice, but he was just flat. He basically couldn't do his job because he was living in this shitty situation in a flat share of 7 people. He was not really going to the gym much because he didn't really like going outside of his flat because it was so awful where he lived. His parents were going through some financial things, he was going through financial things, and we spent the next 2 to 3 months working on him, and we did nothing about his work in our one-to-one meetings. We did everything about him. So it's like, right, how's this going with your flat? How are you looking? Have you found somewhere yet? Have you looked at these websites? How's it going with your parents? And basically the next quarter he was all sorted, all done, and he was one of the best performers in the team. So, you know, when you look at the mental health first, then you can look at, you know, working professionally. Because if you can't function mentally, you're not going to be functioning anywhere else.
You became a carer, in a way.
Yeah.
I think that's admirable.
Thank you.
Honestly, I do think.
I wonder if you've learned something out of that, about yourself, about others, about life, perhaps, that could help you, you know, rebuild a sense of meaning to that experience.
Again, no. God, you're asking so many good questions that I've never addressed. Because for me, this is not, you know, because this is something that happened a significant time ago, is that, you know, the support after, and I remember, you know, having a lot of mental health visits from the nurse, medications, you know, it was like, and how are you feeling? There was no deep dive.
Yeah.
There was like, are you okay? There was no deep dive, you know. There was no, what was the reason behind this? You know, if there was, I do not remember. I remember within the institution that I was in, within the clinic, that I used to wake up in the morning, be watched whilst I was given medication. And then, like, it was basically a converted house in the middle of nowhere in the southeast of England. And there was a select few people in there, probably about 8 people in there, mostly women. And you were given medication in the morning. And honestly, I don't remember much about those 3 to 4 weeks. And, you know, I don't remember any. I remember meeting with the doctor, with the therapist, with a doctor. Mm-hmm. And then I left. I don't remember anything else. And then subsequently after that, I don't remember anything about actually, apart from a couple of sessions towards the end of my treatment, under the care of, you know, mm-hmm. the different health associations. I don't remember much. Sorry.
What would you like those mental health professionals to know, to understand?
I think, you know, looking back now is to take attempts on life seriously in terms of not only what was the cause of the person to do that, but what's the backstory? Is it something about now that happened, or is it something that's happened for years? And to deep dive and to go back into the cause and effect of that state of mind, because, you know, that's one thing that really does get me angry about the period of back then in terms of mental health education, mental health support, is it was just so terrible in my experience. And, you know, it was basic. And I think it's been basic, and I think in Europe it's been basic for decades.
From that moment onwards, what gave you strength? What gives you strength? Not to go back to those lower places, lower points in your life.
Not going to lie, that I have over the years been in not quite so low places as that time, but I have been in some very low, dark places for a period of time. But it taught me how to ask for help. It taught me how to express myself with friends, with partners, sometimes not in the most healthiest of ways, but certainly just expressing myself. And that's a journey for me, because if you imagine that I've spent, you know, a quarter of my life not being able to express myself, then how do you learn to do that later on in life? And I'm reaping the negative benefits. No, I wouldn't say that. The negative sides of not expressing that properly in my personal life at the moment. So, but it's a process, and I'm learning that process. You know, I'm 38 years old. I wasn't allowed to be a child. I wasn't allowed to be emotionally available. And I'm still learning. And it's difficult. It's difficult. And, you know, I envy people that are, in a way, level-headed, sorted, you know, people that are emotionally stable, let's say, because it's a skill. And I don't always have that skill. But it can be learned, and that's one thing that I've learned, is that it can be learned, but also taught. So, you know, I take great joy in listening to people, in the way in which people listen to me, and I'm always available for people if they're struggling, but even like, you know, pick up the phone. You know, if somebody calls me and I'm like, oh, why are they calling me? Always pick up the phone. Because there can always be a reason why somebody's calling out of the blue. Because it could have been, you know, I didn't call when I should have done. And if I had, how many people would have picked up the phone? I don't know. I didn't try. But perhaps that's one thing that has taught me is that, you know, if somebody calls, always pick up the phone. Because you never know what is at the end of that.
Would I be correct in saying that, or assuming that you might be an example to many, many people?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I would.
Well, thank you.
I
But
would.
I wouldn't say that I'm an example to...
You're resilient. I mean, you are resilient. This is the pure definition of resilience.
Perhaps. I don't feel that way. No, I think going back to, you know, all of the things that I've gone through since that episode is, you know, it's not been the best. I've had a good life so far. You know, I can't complain. It's not been perfect of late, but, you know, on the whole, it's been quite good. You know, when you look at people who, you know, happen to be, you know, fighting... No, I'm not Greta Thunberg, you know. I'm not, you know, standing up in front of the United Nations, but, you know, I'm doing what I feel is right for me.
That's such an overwhelming task. I mean, we can only expect to, or hope to, touch people around us.
If I do that, then, you know, that's lovely. But it's not something that ever dwells on me. It's not something that ever comes to my mind.
Well, people will listen to your words through this interview. So, to wrap up, I was wondering, what would you like these people to learn, to know, like a final message to people who might be facing the same dark periods that you have?
Completely. So I think, you know, today that it's really important to firstly pick up the phone, speak to somebody. If it's a support line, if you can't reach any of your friends, if there's nobody that's around you that you feel that you can speak to, there's plenty now support out there that you can pick up to just express yourself, to not go through with ending your life, basically. And push. If you feel that you are facing a really dark period of your life, and you'll know when it's coming. You'll know when it's coming. Because little thoughts come into your head every now and again. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Do I need to be here? Etc. Those things will come in. And the more and more that comes in, that's the moment that you literally need to stand up. Whether you're in the UK, whether you're in Spain, whether you're in the States, wherever, you just stand up and go, I need the help, and I want the help right now, and I want it ASAP. Otherwise, you won't see me next week. And if somebody doesn't listen to you, go knocking on the next door. And go knocking on the next door. And, you know, if that's a, you know, a public health service, but honestly, you know, if you need to go to a private individual, a private therapist, a private psychiatrist, do it. Because there's people out there that need to, that will help you. And there's people out there that care. So yeah, always stand up and say, I need the help now. Because that's something I didn't do. And thankfully, I've learned how to do that now.
To me, those are the words of an example to follow. So thank you so much.
Thank you.